Here, little fishy, fishy, fishy. Here, fishy, fishy, fishy. Wake up, little fish. Hello, fishy, fishy, fishy. Fishy. What a cute little fish. Drawn on a 7x7 piece of paper in crayon, which relates directly to today's episode of Tent Talks Tunes, brought to you via me live on the dreaded Facebook. Yes. If you see me sitting in front of my fabulous public access television backdrop, and you hear my voice, and you see this gorgeous mug, then you know you're either watching live on Facebook at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or you're tuned to my YouTube channel, where all of my archives and rants and raves and rages and rails are on my permanent record. Or maybe you're just watching Tent Talks Tunes on my Facebook page sometime in the future. I don't know. I have no control over time or space. I wish I did. I wish I could break the sleep barrier. I wish I could predict the future. I wish I knew when the value of a 1916 D Mercury dime was going to drop precipitously so I could afford to buy one. I wish I could predict the day when a 1909 SVDB Lincoln cent would suddenly become next to worthless so I could acquire one for my cabinet, you know? It'd be nice, but I can't do it. So I don't know where you are. I don't know when you are. I don't know what the hell's going on, but I do know that I'm here now, and I'm ready to talk about some records. So if you guys are ready, let's get it going, shall we? It's been an extremely busy day here at TPOS World Headquarters. TPOS, my record label. Extremely busy day today. Oh my God. So I'm mildly flummoxed and flustered, but I'm ready to go. I put together this show, and it happened the way it so often happens. I was peacefully asleep one night, and, you know, awoke. I should say that night and day are relative terms for me, because I'm a total nocturnal beast. I usually get to bed around 4 o'clock in the morning, wake up around noon or maybe 1, and then begin my day in earnest around 2. Go out for a nice run a couple miles, have breakfast, you know, run errands and whatnot. And like my day really doesn't begin until like maybe 3 or 4 p.m. full blown, you know. But once I start, I don't stop. So I woke up one morning, and I guess it was morning because it was probably around 10 a.m. And I just got the idea for today's show. Records with the personal touch. And this might have come to me because I am surrounded by records pretty much at all times. Like, for example, if I just reach right over here without even looking, I don't have to do any work at all. There's a record right there. And in this case, it's a nice copy of School's Out by Alice Cooper, with the fold-out cover. No panties, but it is an original green label. Alice Cooper, School's Out. If I reach over here in this direction, let's see, I can't quite reach it, but trust me, there's a record there. If I could grab it, I'd show it to you. I'm surrounded by records, and I was also having a conversation with a guy named Bob Lewis, and Bob Lewis is bona fide legit one of the co-founders of Devo. And I just finished up last night an epic 3-part interview with Bob Lewis, the co-founder of Devo, which is going to air at some point on Tent Talks Tunes, or maybe one of the Malcolm Tent Shoot interviews that I do on Sundays. But we were talking, and he had this great anecdote about how Devo had to hand assemble all of their records when they first started out. Tony Glaze, Marvin Haywood, Matt Maticola, and Robopuff Law, thanks for tuning in. Devo had to hand assemble all of their records when they first started out. And you might think, well, that's not possible, because, you know, when you get a Devo product, for example, this one here. This is great because I got a hot tip that some of the Devo reissues that had come out a couple of years back were now in the cutout bins. Oh my God. We've talked about the cutout bins a lot on this program. Oh yes. Yes, oh yes. The funny thing is the cutout bin nowadays is not a place where you could go at a department store and find a cool record for 99 cents. Now the cutout bin is a page you go to on a set sales site where you can find a really cool album for $15.49. But when you consider that the original list price on this thing was like 39 bucks, maybe even 40 bucks, for me to pick it up for $15.49, postage paid, was quite a bargain, quite a bargain. So this is the kind of thing you're used to if you buy a Devo record. You know, you get full color front, full color back, gatefold sleeve with deluxe art and liner notes, and you open it up and it's got one inner sleeve and it's got another inner sleeve and it's on colored vinyl, and you know the front of it is die cut so you can put your hand through it, and it comes with, you know, Devo fidget spinners and a poster and a hype sticker. I mean, that's just kind of like, that's the standard of packaging we're dealing with now. But in the very beginning, in the beginning of the career of Devo, they were just like all the rest of us, a couple of mildly potato-like, semi-washed guys and gals without very much in the way of celebrity appeal or charisma, just a bunch of hard, dirty working spuds trying to make their music. So what they did is what a lot of us do. They saved up their nickels and dimes and quarters and their shekels and their marks, and they saved up enough money to record a couple of songs and send the tape of it to a pressing plant and have the records manufactured. And then there was a printing company in town where they would go to get the covers printed, and they would get a carload of records and a carload of sleeves and load them all up into their living room and sit around with all their friends and insert records into sleeves and fold them up and make them all by hand. And that's what Devo did with their very first record, the Jocko Homo Mongoloid single. If you look at this record, every bit of it is hand assembled. And Bob Lewis tells the very funny story of how when they got the covers back from the print shop and they started to fold them up and stick the records in them, they didn't realize that it's a three-part sleeve with no sealed top or no sealed bottom. So when you put the record in, it just goes straight down the bottom. There's no way to hold the record into the sleeve. Now that's Devo. So what did Devo do in order to solve this problem? They got themselves down to the stationery store, and I once again hope you guys can make this out. They bought, according to Bob, 15,000 of those little black adhesive circles, the little black dots that you peel off and stick onto objects. And we'll see if can you see that there on the bottom? 15,000 times they took the black circle, the black dot, peeled it off, and stuck it onto the bottom of the record. And there you can see it on the inside of the record as well. And they did it to the top too. Here's the one on the top. They put black adhesive dots on every single copy of the first pressing of Jocko Homo, so that when you stuck the record in the cover, the dot would hold it into place. That's the personal touch. That's perseverance. That's what separates the men from the mice and the women from the wimps. The wheat from the germ. The chaff from the chapstick. It's all because the members of Devo and their support team in a living room in Akron, Ohio, had the sheer gumption and the drive to put 30,000 black stickers on 15,000 records so the thing wouldn't fall apart when somebody picked it up. That's the personal touch. That's what I'm talking about on tonight's episode of Tent Talks Tunes. I have another example of that, which is kind of similar. As I'm sure many of you know, because I've told you about 1,700,000 million billion jillion times, because I love to toot my own horn, I'm Anti-Scene's bass player, baby. I went from being a fan to a friend to a full-fledged highfalutin member of the group. I'm Anti-Scene's bass player. Pretty cool. Always been a fan. Now, this is kind of a similar trajectory to what we've seen with Devo. When you pick up an Anti-Scene record now, it's deluxe. Full color front. Full color back. Gatefold sleeve with mega packaging on the inside. You open it up. And there's a poster. And you pull the record out. It's in a deluxe full color sleeve. And you take the record out. And it's on white vinyl with a full color label. A round replica of the Japanese flag. It's high concept all the way and super swank. But it was not always thus. It was not always thus in the Queen City of Charlotte, North Carolina. No. Back when Anti-Scene had that much in common with Devo, and that they were just a bunch of hard-working, honest dudes in the Queen City, when they decided to make their humble offerings to the worldwide vinyl discography, and this is just an example, their second record, EP Royalty, featuring the hit single Ruby, Ruby, Get Back to the Hills, they did it the same way Devo did. They recorded the songs, they made a tape, they sent the tape off to the pressing plant sent them a whole bunch of records in sleeves, and then the boys in the band went to whatever local print shop there was and had these sleeves printed. Strictly DIY. And I didn't even know about this till recently because our fearless leader, the one and only Jeff Clayton, there he is, was talking about this on one of his recent vlogs. I guess you call them a vlog, whatever you call a video log, whatever it is I'm doing right now, a broadcast. He talked about how they were determined that they didn't want to do a regular kind of like hardcore 7-inch, which is like the way I'd usually do it. You print a, let's see, I've got an example here. This is even cruder. This is, I probably shouldn't go public with this just yet, but I might as well. This is a test pressing of the Malpractice single, which is going to be coming out soon on TPOS Records, baby. My label. Malpractice test pressing. So how did I make this? Well, kind of the same way. Got the record made. The records arrived, which in this case is the test pressing. I went even more crude and more DIY than most bands. I printed the sleeves, the front and the back, on my home printer. So you couldn't do that in the 1980s. In the early 80s, there was no such thing as a home inkjet printer. You had to go to a print shop. That was the best you could do with DIY, was to go to the local print shop and have them print the sleeves. I made these at home, printed them on paper, assembled them. You get to see a craftsman in work right now. Hand assembled the records, right? Front, back, record in the middle. Got them nice and neat and lined up, and took the finished version and stuck it into a plastic bag. Voila! That's the DIY method of releasing records that I've indulged in since 1983. Anti-Scene did not want to go that route. They wanted to have an actual glued one-piece sleeve. See, they didn't want to be like Devo with 15,000 sleeves and a bunch of Avery stickers. No. They wanted a glued and seamed one-piece sleeve. But how did you do that? You got to remember, this is 1985. Sorry, 86. To get a sleeve like this printed was a very expensive proposition if you went to a professional record manufacturer or jacket fabricator. For the longest time, the equation was always that a good deluxe printed sleeve glued in one piece was more expensive than the record itself, especially for an LP. The jacket cost more than the record. And for a long time, that was kind of a prohibiting factor from doing LPs because, yes, maybe I could afford to do 12-inch vinyl, but I couldn't afford to print the covers. And that's why some of the TPOS stuff that did come out on full-length vinyl, such as the Bunny Brains double album, had handmade covers. And a lot of the 7 inches that I and many other bands did all had handmade sleeves because it was just too expensive or too non-professional looking to do it otherwise. But Anti-Scene would not settle. They wanted a glued one-piece sleeve, so they actually took apart a regular seamed and glued sleeve. They might have gone to Record Bar and purchased the latest hit single by Loverboy, which came in a professional printed sleeve. And they very carefully disassembled the sleeve and unfolded it and traced the actual shape of the sleeve, which was the front, the back, and 2 flaps, one on the top and one on the bottom, that you would then fold over, right? You'd fold the flaps over and then fold the sleeve together, and you would apply glue to the flaps, and that would hold the entire thing together, and then you would stick the record inside. So that's what Anti-Scene did. They disassembled a Loverboy 7-inch. Correct me if it wasn't Loverboy, but you know what I mean. One of those glossy, full-color 45 RPM record sleeves from J.C. Penney or what have you. They dissected it, made their own version, sent it to the print shop, and then sat down with 500 or so of these things, cut each one out by hand. They cut out the front, they cut out the back, they cut out the little flap on the top and cut out the little flap on the bottom, and then they folded the flap over on the top and folded the flap over on the bottom, and then they folded the sleeve together, and then they applied glue to each flap, smushed them shut, waited for them to dry, and when the record's finally dried, stuck the record in the sleeve, and there you had the product. The product! That's the back of the product right there, kids. Woo, that's a lot of work. But you know what? That's what you got to do sometimes. That's the personal touch. The personal touch. Just talking about it, I need a drink. Some of that fabled Danbury tap water this week in a 1-gallon jug. Because a gallon a day keeps the AMA quack far away. Let's take a little scroll down here and see who's tuned in. Looks like Amanda's tuned in, and Nick, and Rich, and Stefan. Hey, guys. Oh, yeah, a lot of people. Shane, my old bandmate Shane. You guys have heard me talk about Broken Talent a few times. Well, Shane Hansen was the drummer for Broken Talent. And maybe he doesn't like the spotlight turned in on him, but it's too late. You're on the internet. You have no secrets. Shane Hansen. If anybody out there likes Broken Talent, say hey to Shane. A rare appearance. Rare appearance by Shane Hansen of Broken Talent. Now, I will admit freely, fully, to being flipperized. Flipper rule, okay? Flipper, we want to talk about the personal touch. They went about as DIY as you possibly could. And I got to tell you, one reason why I love these personal touch records that I'm talking about is that the members of the bands themselves did all this work, you know? When you want to talk about the personal touch, the members of Flipper themselves, you know, we don't know exactly who, but Flipper took a crayon and a piece of paper and drew that fish and scribbled that abstract art. And they had rubber stamps. And the members of Flipper themselves stamped these covers and added just a little bit of abstract art. These are bona fide, genuine, handmade first pressings of one of the great records of all time by Flipper or any band ever. I'm talking, of course, about the immortal Sex Bomb on the A side and Brainwash on the B side. I ain't joking. If you ever heard Broken Talent, you might hear a little bit of Flipper in there. If you've heard one of my current bands, the almighty Ultra Bunny, that's one word, look it up, Ultra Bunny, you'll hear a lot of Flipper in Ultra Bunny. Unrepentantly, unashamedly. And there's the piece of paper I was talking about before. They didn't even go to a print shop. They just took 8.5 by 14 paper and cut off an inch or two on the side and folded it in half. Started rubber stamping, started drawing. Took the records, shoved them into the sleeve, stuck them in a bag, and all of a sudden, you had a legitimate product. And this was hugely inspiring to me. Me and Big Santo, who was the lead singer for Broken Talent, he's the guy who pointed out to me that it was that easy. You know, that you didn't have to have a full color glossy sleeve like Journey did or REO Speedwagon did. You could do what Flipper did. Flipper literally just took a sheet of paper and folded it in half and stuck the record inside of it. And that, if it was done correctly and done artistically enough, was enough to take to a record store and sell. Wow. All right, so this is live, and my main Neil says that the rolling click background noise is yet again in effect. I wish I knew what to do about the clicking noise that comes through when I talk. If anybody out there is good at troubleshooting this stuff and knows why my video camera apparently clicks sometimes when I speak, please post the solution, because I don't know. I've tried to shoveltrude it. I've tried very hard to shoveltrude it, but I have not found the solution. I even took a piece of paper, which might be laying around here somewhere. Oh, here it is. Check this out. I made a shim. You know the old biblical saying, give this shim to the men of Shem? I actually took this shim, very much like a Flipper record sleeve, and at one time I inserted it into this annoying little gap that there is between the lens and the tripod of my camera. I actually shoved this paper in there in an attempt to minimize the click. But it apparently did not work. So, I don't know, guys. I hope it's not too obtrusive, and I hope I, on the other hand, did not just waste $80 on a camera when my $20 camera apparently did not make that extremely annoying clicking noise. Doug, the video genius, says that sometimes it's autofocus doing it. I wish I knew how to turn off the autofocus. The whole reason I got this stupid camera was because it had autofocus. Because my other camera with the fixed focus would not allow me to show close-up items. It would just be this big blurry mess, unlike my hand, where you could read my palm right now. You know, that's a definite plus with autofocus, is you can do the close-ups. I don't know. What can I tell you? I come from the good old days when you could take a VHS camera about the size of a suitcase, put it on your shoulder and it weighed 40 pounds, and smuggle it into the Nirvana concert and videotape it, which is what I did. And you would end up with a videotape that you could play in any video cassette deck anywhere on the fucking planet. And it would work. Unlike this digital bullshit. Now I have to take a drink of water because I'm pissed off. To being pissed off. Urgh. And Grant Den, the original guitar player for Broken Talent, even before we had Marky Awesome, he points out that a Flipper song was the very first song that we ever played together. Flipper rule, okay? Okay. All right, I've been on my temper tantrum. I've had my tirade. Let's get back down to the brass gritty, shall we? Here's a record that I cannot, in any semblance of conscience, actually show on camera. They'll put me in Facebook jail if I show this. But it's like the best example ever of not only somebody completely driven to get their message out, but the personal touch of DIY to the max. Did I stop talking about Flipper already? I think I did. I'll just give a little postscript. That Flipper record, I had like half a dozen of those at one time. I know, should have kept them, but I kept a couple, and there they are in the personal collection. They're not going anywhere. Later pressings of this record had a printed sleeve. Same deal, fold over one piece of paper, but printed and not hand done. Still pretty cool. All right, so anyway, back to the topic at hand here. Another record that cannot show in good conscience on Facebook or anywhere else where civilized people hang out. When you take a look at the inner sleeve and you see the name and address on there, you'll probably understand why. The inner sleeve of this record has the artist's name and his address at the time written on it. Yep, G.G. Allen, Beach Street, Manchester, New Hampshire. G.G. at some points in his life was so completely, utterly down and out that he couldn't even afford to release vinyl. He could only afford to release cassettes. And he would release his music on old recycled answering machine tapes. If he was signed to a label and they gave him promo cassettes, he would take a sharp object and scrape all of the writing off of the cassette shell and then write his song titles on it. That's how driven this guy was. At one point in his life, he was just not down and out enough to where he couldn't afford to press vinyl. He could afford to press vinyl, but as I mentioned earlier, he couldn't afford to print covers because the album jacket was more expensive than the vinyl itself. So I guess he was able to skip beer for a couple of days, couple of weeks, whatever, and get some records pressed, which came out on his own label, Blood Records. And to solve the problem of not having cover art that he could afford, this guy actually he didn't even hand assemble, he drew and wrote the song titles on every single album cover. That's the back. That's about all. On every single cover. He hand drew every single cover, in the same deal. I'm not going to get banned off of Facebook, but I will show you just a little bit of it. He handmade every single one of these album covers with magic markers. And I've seen a whole bunch of these where he didn't even have covers. He had only paper sleeves. And he drew on the paper sleeves and wrote the song titles on the paper sleeves. That's the personal touch. That's a real artifact. He even went so far as to take these handmade covers and designate some of them as promos. Dude, I'm not even sure I would have worked that hard. I'm a hard-working man. Man, woman. Of course, modern-day pressings of this do have full printed jackets with, artwork and photography and all that. Bronson says that Bronson has one of these. I'll take it. Gimme, Bronson, gimme. You don't want it, I do. And Chico, my main man Chico from up north, says it's in excellent condition. Yes, it is in excellent condition. That goes back to the day. It was kind of like Sun Ra records. For the longest time when Sun Ra was alive, nobody wanted his records. You'd find them, maybe not in the dollar bins, but you'd find them cheap all the time. And it was easy to collect Sun Ra records when he was alive because Sun Ra had the same aesthetic. Hand-drawn covers, records pressed on the cheap, the personal touch. And in part because of that, and in part because his music, the music of Sun Ra, was so dense and impenetrable, nobody wanted it. It was a tough sell. So it was easy, dude. It was easy to collect Sun Ra records when he was alive. And it was easy to collect G.G. Allin records when he was alive. I find them on the cheap all the time. That copy right there of the EMF album, I think pretty sure I paid $10 for that one at a record show somewhere. And especially up here in the Northeast, you know, Gigi was from New Hampshire, so his records were pretty much all over the place, usually in a cheap bin somewhere. But of course, once he died, that was the end of that. Top dollar, baby. Top dollar! Luckily, I got my Gigi collection pretty much complete before that fateful day at the gas station in New York City in June of 1993, a show I was at, the story of which I have told, and which is posted on my YouTube channel. So if you want to hear the story of G.G. Allin's last ever performance as eyewitnessed by moi, and the story of how I came to release his last ever recording session on vinyl, go to my YouTube channel. Look it up. I attempt to be entertaining. Now you want to talk about the personal touch? Yes, we do. I always get a little commercial in. Just a little commercial for myself, because I'm a good product and I believe in promoting good products. How much work will I put into making a record? I'll tell you how much. I will take, it's not a tape anymore, but I will take a digital file, and I won't mail it to a pressing plant anymore, but I will upload it to a guy in Tennessee who makes custom hand-lathed vinyl. Each one cut in real time, by hand, by a human being. And I'll get them in the mail, and I'll take these records, and I'll stick them into bright red sleeves, and I'll use my aforementioned copier, and I'll print the front, affix it to the record, I'll print the back, put it on the back of the record, get them nice and neat, stick them in a plastic bag, and say, hey guys, this is the second pressing of my Malcolm Tent Sings from the beloved songbook of Jello Biafra. This is me doing Dead Kennedy songs with my Star-Spangled Acoustic guitar. You know how many of these I made? And you know why I'm willing to go through all the effort to print, cut, and assemble? I only made 6 of these. 6. 6. That's it. There ain't but 6 of these on the entire planet. Keeping one for myself. Sold one last week. So if anybody out there wants one of the 4 remaining copies, get a hold of me quick. Because if you people out there have good taste, they're not going to last long. And this is a direct result of people saying, oh, well, you know, you sound like Jello Biafra. Well, if I'm going to sound like Jello Biafra, I'm going to sound like Jello Biafra on record. And I'm going to sing Dead Kennedy songs. I'm like Lady Gaga. I was born this way. I can't help it if my voice sounds like Jello Biafra when I sing. I'm sorry. I apologize. But not to the extent where I will dissuade anybody from buying one of my records. That's it. Just saying. That was today's commercial. Look me up on Discogs and eBay. My label is TPOS. And the more you support me, the less likely I am to go out into the wild, woolly streets of Connecticut and do things like kick fire hydrants, throw snowballs, or go like this to people in windows. You are helping to keep me in line. Thank you. A toast to you keeping me in line. Curbing my antisocial tendencies. Speaking of antisocial tendencies, last week on Tent Talks Tunes, I delivered a marathon monologue on the first ever punk rock show I ever saw, which was, of course, Black Flag. And I talked about how my BFF forever, Jill Elizabeth, who might be tuned in. Jill, if you're tuned in, say hey. We want to see you and hear you. It's cool that we got Shane and Grant and maybe Jill. That would be 3 Broken Talent alum on one broadcast. If you're all out there, that'd be really neat. Kind of a reunion, you know. Anyway, as I talked about last week, Jill had a copy of Damaged by Black Flag. And she didn't particularly care for it. It was not her bag of tea. It wasn't her speed. I had a copy of Heroes by David Bowie. Didn't really like it. Wasn't my thing. I thought Low was a far better album. I thought Lodger was a far better album. But she really wanted my copy of Heroes. I really wanted her copy of Damaged. So we just swapped. She got my Heroes. I got her Damaged. I still got the Damaged. And Jill, if you're out there, let us know if you still got that copy of Heroes. I hope you do, because that was my record. Anyway, my abject, complete, and utter slavery to Black Flag notwithstanding, and the fact that I love this record, this is the record that has the very famous "As a parent, I found it an anti-parent record" sticker on the back. Each and every one of which was placed on the record by somebody in Black Flag. Or at least somebody at the SST offices, which meant they were probably in Black Flag. Or the Minutemen, or the Descendants, or Saccharine Trust. Somebody from the SST family hand stuck that sticker on this record. The reason being, if you already know this story, just kind of bear with me. It's a good story. Black Flag made a very dangerous and bad decision at one time to try to get major label distribution for this album. Can you imagine this being distributed by some fucking major label? Well, they thought it was a good idea at the time. The deal, of course, went south, as is well documented elsewhere. The problem was they had 25,000, I'm pretty sure that's the actual number, 25,000 jackets for Black Flag Damaged, each one of which had a logo on the back corner for the major label. And since the deal was off, that logo had to go. So they did what Black Flag did best. They rolled up their sleeves and they got down to work, and they had 25,000 of these stickers made. And that's a quote from the major label jerk-off who refused to distribute the album. They said, all right, if he said it, it must be true. It is now part of our marketing campaign. They took those stickers off a roll and stuck each copy by hand on the cover. That's the personal touch. This very record was handled by somebody in Black Flag. Or maybe the Descendants. Or maybe the Minutemen. I don't know. But somebody who's pretty goddamn crucial to the story of American punk rock. And world punk rock, for that matter. Yep. The personal touch. This was handled by the people themselves. Just like that Flipper record I showed you, just like that G.G. Allen record I showed you, just like that Anti-Scene record I showed you, just like that Devo record I showed you, actually went through the hands of the people themselves. That's cool. That's real cool. I got one more to tell you all about. I was going to go on and on about this one, but you'll hear about this one in my interview with Bob Lewis, the co-founder of Devo, and the famous Devo rubber stamps. And the Devo rubber stamped albums. Or I should say Devo rubber stamped promo 12-inchers that went out. That's a different story for a different day. The last record I got has a very personal touch. And I've posted the photo of this one before, but I love the story so much that I want to actually speak it and say it and spell it out loud. if you hadn't guessed by now, besides running the record label, besides being in fabulous bands like They Hate Us and the Bloody Apostles and Anti-Scene and Ultra Bunny and doing Malcontent solo acoustic stuff, besides being in all these great bands and having this awesome label, I buy and sell used records. Because I had my record store for 21 years, I've always bought, sold, and traded. And even now in the new normal, I still at least make an effort to buy, sell, and trade. So if you got a record collection you want to get rid of, talk to me. My checkbook is at the ready. So about 6 years ago, and as I speak these words, it's early 2021. About 6 years ago, I got a call from a woman who wanted to sell her record collection. And she lived here in town, so I went over there. And it turned out that her name was Joyce. I forget her last name. I've got the check that I wrote to her. So if I needed to, I could find the last name. Her name was Joyce. She was your archetypal New York City old hippie. She was there in New York City in the 60s when hippiedom was in full flower. And she had a ton of records. And she also had great stories, just great stories about being in New York City in the 60s and being a hippie and going to the Fillmore and, hanging out in the parks and living at the Chelsea Hotel for a while and, meeting, Janice and Jimmy and all them because everybody was just kind of hanging around. It wasn't like a great big stardom or celebrity trip the way she says. There was just everybody was in New York hanging out, going to clubs and making the scene. And she said that she remembered when she was living at the Chelsea, these two new kids moved in, Patty and Robert. Patty Smith and Robert Mapplethorpe. And they were new in town and nobody really knew, they weren't anybody. They were just a couple of new kids in town at the Chelsea and they were just kind of there hanging out along with everybody else and whatever. Of course, she became Patty Smith. And he later became Robert Mapplethorpe. Two big deals. I thought that's kind of cool. And I believed her. I totally believed her when she said it because why would she lie about something like that? And all of her stories rang of authenticity and her record collection was certainly of the time and of the place. And I had a very pleasant afternoon just hanging out with her and looking at her collection and hearing her stories. And I made her an offer. She accepted. I loaded up the vehicle with her $700 or $800, $700 or $800 records, 700 or 800 records. I knew I could say it. Loaded up her 700 or 800 records and started sorting them out because she wanted to get rid of the whole lot. And they weren't all great. Some of them were junk. So I started parsing. I took the junk and put them in a box over here and took the good ones and put them over there and one or two that I wanted to keep for myself, including this one right here because Three Dog Night are badass. If y'all didn't know that, I'm here to tell you right now, Three Dog Night are badass. Love Three Dog Night. Still love Three Dog Night. Had this record when I was a kid. When I was 8 years old-ish. Many years after the fact, I met somebody who knew me when I was in second grade. And they said, oh, all you ever talked about was Three Dog Night, Three Dog Night, Three Dog Night. And I was like, did I really? Yeah, you love Three Dog Night. All right. I knew I did. I didn't know that I was marking out on them that badly. But this was the album. This was the Three Dog Night album. So I was like, oh, cool. Joyce had one of those. I'll keep this one for myself. It's not a particularly rare record. It's not even valuable. Probably find it in the dollar bin if you look hard enough, but it's still Three Dog Night. I grew up with it. I love it. So I put it aside into my pile. Fast forward a little bit to when I finally got around to listening to some records. I said, oh, Three Dog Night. Yeah, let's listen to this Three Dog Night record, I love this record. I haven't heard it in forever. And it's still got the poster. It was printed with a detachable poster on the first pressing. This hung on my bedroom wall when I was a little tiny kid. And the poster had come off, but it was still there. And I'm looking at it, and I kind of did a double take. All right, because, you know, you got the outside of the poster on the front and the outside of the poster on the back. Somebody had written their name on the cover of the album. I hate it when people write their names on the covers of the albums. I really do. I hate it when they do that. You should not write your name on your album covers. It defaces them. It devalues them. Detracts from their aesthetic appeal. Somebody wrote their name on the album cover. But I got to admit that I was somewhat intrigued when even without my glasses on, I could see the name written on the cover. And considering who I got it from and the stories she told me, I have no doubt in my mind whatsoever that this copy of Three Dog Night Golden Biscuits actually, really, honestly did belong to Patti Smith. I really, honestly believe it. I have no reason in the world to doubt that this was her record and she had it with her in New York City at the Chelsea Hotel, and that woman Joyce just ended up with it somehow. She did not try to brag about it. She did not try to sell it to me as an authentic artifact. It was just a record stuck in with the other 699 records I bought off of her one afternoon. So I'm keeping this one. Mine. Mine! And if I ever do meet Patti Smith, I'm going to ask her about that. Just saying. Whew, so that's it, gang. I have said all that I have to say about records for this week, anyway. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in and for checking me out. Don't know if you guys can hear that, but Harry the cat is sounding kind of restless. You know, I've talked about Harry so much. We've still never seen him on camera. And I was going to grab him, but he just jumped off the chair and ran away. So I think he knew, and he's kind of camera shy. So no Harry this week. We're going to work on getting Harry on camera soon. Promise. So anyway, stay tuned. I've got other interviews coming up. I got Bob Lewis, the co-founder of Devo. I've got John Howard, who used to work behind the counter at Trash American Style and was in Freak Baby and Jet Jaguar and the Hat City Intuitive. I've got various anti-scene shoot interviews coming up. And of course, I'm all over the goddamn place. Discogs, eBay, YouTube. Go there and check me out. Support my scene. Please. And thank you. I do expect to be back in about 167 hours time. So until we meet again, this is Malcolm Tent saying so long from the Nutmeg State.